Rod Fleming here. Now, I want to have a look at a wee article I saw on Medium. I'm actually a member of Medium. I pay my wee subscription every month. It's not that common that you see something that's really gripping, but this one was interesting. It's an interesting piece. It's called A Normal Man's Guide to Loving Transgender Women. You can tell right away that this guy thinks he's normal, and we're going to see just exactly how normal he's not. Anyway, he is called Perry Gruber, and it turns out that Perry Gruber is an ex-US Marine. He is married. His wife, it turns out, is a lesbian, but he's quite happy with that situation for reasons that you will soon find out. And Mr. Gruber, to start with, sets out his stall in discussing what he calls masculinity. And he says it's difficult for men is reconciling their attraction to trans women, in this case, with being a normal man, which is to say a straight man. Well, okay, it's not as difficult as you think so, but never mind. Now, he quotes a paper which was comes from the American Psychological Association. Now, that's not the American Psychiatric Association, right? This is not really the serious one. This is the one that nobody ever bothers with because it's that one, you know. But actually there are two APAs, and this is the one nobody ever listens to. Anyway, this said that traditional masculinity stunts a male's psychological development, constrains their behaviour, results in gender role strain and gender role conflict, and negatively influences their mental health and physical health. And we all know that's complete nonsense. What he means when he's talking about this is, you know, just being a guy. And somehow being a guy turns out to be damaging to men's health, which is a complete nonsense. But anyway, Mr. Gruber then goes into a spiel about what he calls womb envy, which as far as I know doesn't exist. Men are not generally speaking that concerned about the fact that women make babies. I don't know any men who really lose any sleep over that. I don't know any men who, unless they are actually autogynephilic, that is, who desperately want to have periods every month. They don't really want to be women, unless they're autogynephilic. So womb envy is something that is immediately, it should trigger you. You should say, what? We're talking about an autogynephilic. Then says he realised he's transamorous, what he calls transamorous, what I would call transphilic. He's attracted to trans women, right? Then he goes on, and there's an awfully cute picture of him here, wearing one of his mother's dress, and he looks, you know, he's post-pubertal, classic. So, he then says that sometimes I would sneak into my mother's closet. It was an endless sea of femininity. There I would dress in my mother's clothes. I used her lipstick and pranced before her full-length mirror. Her lingerie intrigued me. Often these sessions would end with masturbation. Now, you've got a classic autogynephile here of the transvestite type. He's absolutely classic. He then goes on to say that he didn't really know what transgender was, and to an extent that's probably true. You know, Jessica is a terribly restrictive and repressive society where conformism is everything, you know, and it's very difficult, and certainly was 30 years ago, for men to start to understand differences. Now, let's just make a thing clear here. I don't have any problem with men being autogynephilic, and I've said as much many times. It's fine, that's your path, that's your path, you know. All I say is don't screw other people up on the way, you know, don't get married to a woman, have loads of kids and then say, hey, you know something, I'm actually a woman, and totally stuff her head, you know. Try and be a bit sensible. If you're autogynephilic and you think you're going to want to transition, either don't get married or transition, you know, do it. He also had a great fondness for Lou Reed's song Transformer, which of course is one of the great iconic songs of the era, but where I think where most of us saw a cute little HSTS and went, that might be quite interesting, you know. He saw himself quite clearly. He had several fiancées, it turns out. I guess that, you know, reading between the lines a little bit, to be fair to the gentleman in question, women can be really put off by the idea of autogynephiles. They can. And if an autogynephile was to reveal himself to a woman who thought he was, you know, basically a regular straight Joe, then that might just be enough for the woman to say, no, I'm not doing this. No, I can't do that. That's too much for me. It would depend on the surrounding culture, but certainly in a transphobic culture, it's highly likely that the woman would just refuse and walk away. His present wife, one of them actually did marry him, but it turns out she's a lesbian. What about that? She calls him her gay boy. And he says, it's true. My feminine side is well developed. You know, I'll bet it is. I'll absolutely bet it is, chap. And yet, I do present as male, although I consider myself to be gender neutral. And I think this is an interesting one because this idea of gender neutral, it's come up quite a lot recently. And I have noticed that a significant number of the men, not so much the women, I think that's a different thing, but for the men who claim to be gender neutral or non-binary are actually autogynephilic, but they just won't take it that bit further. So they're kind of like, I'm actually a woman, but I'm trapped in a man's body, and I can't do anything about it. So I'll be non-binary, you know. Quite a few others are actually bisexual, but the actual bisexuals are really deeply mistrusted within the LGBT, or LGBT if you like, movement, because homosexual males think they're chancers, you know. It's like, you're a straight guy who just wants some gay sex. So quite often they kind of reject that label, you know, that I'm bisexual, and say, oh no, I'm just non-binary. Different thing. Well, there's nobody's non-binary. It's a non-thing. It doesn't exist. And here's where love came into the picture. And by love, I mean self-love. The Marines, because he reckoned that if you could take shit from the Marines, you could take shit from anyone. That's a great idea, a great reason to join a military corps, you know. He says something really interesting, right? Now he says, as I love myself, I love the blend that is the transgender female form. Once physically presenting as male, softened by transition. I love the struggle transgender women go through. I love their strength. I love that they are sometimes reviled not only by men, women and society, but even by their parents. I love them because I know all these challenges made them what they are. Now that sounds all very good, doesn't it? It sounds right on. Here's the thing. I don't know any guy, straight guy, who's involved with an HSTS, and straight guys are very, very rarely involved with AGPs, who wants to know the first thing about their girlfriends when they were still boys. It's like, no thanks. I don't want to know that. Why would I want to know that? And you'll find that the HSTS, certainly here, the HSTS, because HSTS transitions so young here, you know, most HSTS are already transitioned by the time they're 13 or 14. They may be wearing their hair short, but they're probably taking hormones. You know, I've said before, what happens is it's simple. You know, mum will buy them for, or if mum won't, then an auntie will, or, you know, a gay auntie, or somebody will go to the pharmacy and buy because they're using hormone pills, the contraceptive pills. It's easy to get a hold of those, you know. And so, this is a culture where the government is trying to get people to have less babies, fewer babies rather. So yeah, there's plenty of contraceptive pills around, and you know, pre-transsexual boys are swallowing them in the handfuls. You know, I mean it too. Sometimes they overdose, you know, and it doesn't actually kill you or anything. But if you take too much estrogen, it becomes counterproductive because actually it mutates into testosterone. He admits that his marriage to this cis woman who is going through her own, he calls it process of owning her lesbianism, is a marriage of convenience. He then interestingly says that he met his wife online. He hadn't had, this is the convenience marriage, he hadn't had any success in his dating of transgender women. Now, that doesn't surprise me a bit. Quite often, transgender autogynephiles will come together. But the problem is that there's still a clash. And an HSTS, they're only ever going to be interested in an autogynephilic trans woman as long as there's moolah involved, as long as some cash can be extracted through the business of having sex. They don't want that. They want conventional straight men. They don't want guys in dresses. Absolutely not. So, that's not going to work. As a relationship, it can't work because it has to be paid for all the time. It's not a real relationship, it's a money relationship. He said he met trans women who were insecure as he was. Well, here's the thing, you see. He was looking for identifiably trans women, and those would almost always be autogynephilic. In the West, people think there's far fewer trans women than there are because they're invisible. And even here, where nobody gives a damn, trans women are actually quite, HSTS can be very hard to spot. If you're not in a situation where, the context is revealing that, that's going to be, beauty pageant, well, she's obviously trans, but there are other situations where it might be a little bit more clear that that person is a trans. You often wouldn't know. I mean, just to give an example, there is a well-known bar I haven't been to in many years in Pattaya, run by an English guy and his trans wife. They were on TV once. One of the girls that used to serve in the bar there was HSTS. Most of them were autogynephilic, so they're fucking this yay high, And this HSTS was like Sam's size, 5 foot, petite, incredibly feminine, sweet, just lovely, such a lovely girl. And a lot of guys would say, you've actually got a girl working here. Didn't realise she was trans. And the owner would say, no, she's a ladyboy too. And they'd be like, what? Because they don't get it, they don't understand that there are two different types. And all they see are these 6 foot Amazons, and that's what they want to see. And then this wee thing, 5 foot, that looks like butter wouldn't melt and it's just a total poppet. And they go, but no, that's a real girl. That's not a ladyboy, it's a real girl. And the owners go, no, I know what she's a. It's a simple fact. I know what she is. That's how bad it gets. He makes a very fair point, which is mainly, again, directed at autogynephilic trans women, which is that they should stop shaming men for being attracted to them. The reason they do that, though, is that most autogynephilic trans women, or autogynephilic males in the West, are heterosexual. They haven't lost their innate desire for women because they have male sexuality. And so when a man pursues them, they're really like, oh, they give you that typical reaction of a straight guy when he's pursued by a man. It's, oh, not me. Bums against the wall, lads. That's why they do it. I mean, it's because of the rampant transphobia of the West. In Southeast Asia, they go, well, no, you're a girl, so you're just going to have to get with men. And the fact is that most autogynephilic trans women in Southeast Asia, they learn to like sex with men. I mean, you come 2 or 3 times that way, I guess it just works. Anyway, Mr. Gruber goes into a fair bit of other waffle, but there are a few interesting things to observe from what he says. One is that, autogynephilia can set on very, very young. I mean, I'm looking at a picture here of him in his mummy's dress, which I'll cut and put up in the corner there. And I guess, he's not a child, he's a young adolescent. But he is young. It's not like 16 or 17. He's, I would guess around about 12 or 13, which is pretty young, but still, it's after, as soon as puberty hits, autogynephilia can start. And it doesn't really make it clear how long before this he was starting to have his moments of ecstasy in his mother's closet, you know. So there's that. The other thing is that he spends a lot of time talking about his empathy with women and his dislike of what he calls traditional masculinity. And I think that an awful lot of men who call themselves male feminists are actually autogynephilic. And I think what's happening is that they're not actually empathizing with women at all. I mean, let's be quite clear about something. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. It's really impossible for a man to understand a woman. You know, it just can't be done. And vice versa. With an HSTS, it's really a bit different. You'll never really understand an HSTS, but boy, will she understand you. Oh boy, will she understand you. But then with AGPs, they're straight men. And their partners, if they're women, it's like, So what they're actually empathizing with is not the woman out there, but the woman inside themselves. So they're actually empathizing with themselves. So when they say, I'm really a feminist too, this gets right up a feminist's noses. I mean, you can't blame them. I don't have a lot, I have no time for feminism because it's just stupid. It's a stupid idea. Women were far better off before it. But the simple fact is that if you were a feminist, having somebody who's male coming along and saying, yeah, I'm a feminist too, I really understand how awful it is to be a woman. You know, I get it, You know, your struggle is my struggle and I march with women. That must, God, would that get up my nose? Boy, would that get up my nose. And so I have a sympathy for women who go, no, you can't do that. You know, you can't just assume that, you know, because you think you're a woman inside, that you can relate to women in that way. So you're not empathizing with women. You're doing anything but. You're empathizing with yourself, and the feminists would say, which is typically what a man would do. I'm not saying that men can't be empathetic. They can be incredibly empathetic. But it doesn't quite work the way autogynephils think it does. How normal it is to love transgender women. Yeah, well, it is. You know, I'm married to an HSTS and she's a delight. She's an absolute delight. She's lovely. And you couldn't be more feminine. I'm sorry, you just couldn't. I mean, occasionally she's feminine with attitude, but most of the time she's just feminine, but then that's, you know, what's different? I can't see why any straight man would not just go, yeah, cool girl, cool chick, you know. I want to get to know her better. And this happens to trans women all the time. I have to say, to HSTS trans women, that they run into guys who just like, wow, you know, she's really nice, and want to get more interested. And then, you know, things go really badly wrong because the guy, when he realizes that there's 3 legs instead of 2, it's like, shoot, you know, it hits the fan with a big bang. And that's very dangerous for trans women. It's very dangerous. But I mean, not very many people are going to make that mistake about an AJP, even in Asia, where they can be very stunningly beautiful. But they're very stunningly beautiful and 6 feet tall. You don't get it. You know, women here are like 5'2", and so are the HSTS. And then you see these, you know, they're bigger than me, and I'm not petite. And what he says is, if you're trying to be a normal man and think that's okay, then you're just being insecure. I mean, it's just, what other crap? I mean, who goes out to try to be masculine? I don't ever think I went out to try to be masculine. Not in my entire flipping puff did I do that. I'm just me. That's the way I am. You know, and every man I know is exactly the same. They don't think twice. They're not trying to be masculine. They just are masculine. And that's what an autogynephile will never really understand, because they're not. They may appear to be masculine, but inside them there's a big chunk that they have created themselves. I mean, they made it, it's part of them, but they created it as a woman. And it's constantly fighting against them. And they're constantly saying, oh, you know, I've got to think about this woman inside me, you know, this my woman half, my female other, all the rest of it. Men don't think like that. Straight men just don't think like that. We don't. We don't think about being masculine. You know, I don't play with motorcycles and cameras because it's a masculine thing to do. It's because I like it. That's all. It's all it's ever been. And I'm entirely sure if you ask most straight men, and say, well, do you play rugby at the weekends because you think that's more masculine? And they go, no, it's just because it's good fun. You know, and these people, like Mr. Gruber here, they don't get that. Because inside the autogynephilic mind, and we'll just wrap it up with this, is this question. Well, it's not really even a question. It's the idea that being a man is a bad thing. And that's maybe one of the explanations for Western autogynephilia, is that men are brought up to believe that being a man, no, it's not good, it's bad. And he cites things like the Gillette advert, which is absolutely egregious, which he supports, of course, because it showed men in a bad light. He'll approve of everything that shows man in a bad light. I'm absolutely sure that this whole thing, and male feminism, and that whole thing about, it's getting towards late, time for a wee drinky. It's just, all it is autogynephilia. And lots more men than are prepared to admit it demonstrate it. A lot more. I'm prepared to bet that every man who ever said that shit about, I'm a male feminist, I really empathise with you. He was doing one or two things. Either he was an autogynephile or he was lying to get in your pants. It's that simple. Because no straight man's ever going to say that. Not ever. Sorry girls. We may love you, but we don't empathise with you. There's a difference, Take care. See you next time. Bye.